The United States Navy is the largest and most capable maritime fighting force in the world. Right now, at this very moment, more American territory is moving across the ocean than exists in some entire countries. We're not talking about islands or shipping containers. We're talking about 11 floating cities, each one carrying more firepower than most nations possess in their entire arsenal. This is the story of how America became the world's only true global navy, and why the ocean itself shaped the destiny of a superpower. The United States Navy operates the largest and most powerful naval force the world has ever seen, but here's what makes it truly unprecedented. It's the only navy on Earth that can project full-scale military power to any ocean, anywhere, at any time. We're talking about a fleet that includes 11 nuclear-powered aircraft carriers, each one displacing over 100,000 tons and carrying up to 90 aircraft. To put that in perspective, most countries don't even have 90 military aircraft total, let alone 90 on a single ship. But the numbers only tell part of the story. These carriers don't sail alone. Each one travels with a carrier strike group, guided missile cruisers bristling with advanced radar systems, destroyers equipped with weapons that can shoot down ballistic missiles in space, attack submarines lurking beneath the waves, and supply ships that allow the entire formation to operate for months without touching land. It's a complete military ecosystem, floating thousands of miles from American soil. Here's where it gets really interesting. The U.S. Navy maintains a continuous presence in multiple oceans simultaneously. Right now, there are American warships in the Mediterranean Sea, the Persian Gulf, the South China Sea, the waters around Japan and Korea, and patrolling the Atlantic and Pacific. This isn't temporary. This is constant, year after year, decade after decade. No other nation has ever sustained this level of global naval presence. Not the British Empire at its height, not the Spanish Armada, not the ancient Romans who once called the Mediterranean our sea. The fleet consists of approximately 490 ships, including nearly 70 submarines, many of them nuclear-powered, attack subs capable of traveling submerged for months at speeds exceeding 30 knots. The Navy employs over 340,000 active duty personnel and maintains over 2,700 aircraft, making it one of the largest air forces in the world, even without counting the separate U.S. Air Force. So how did this massive naval powerhouse come to exist? The irony is that the United States Navy was born from a nation that wanted nothing to do with a standing military. When America declared independence in 1776, the founders were deeply suspicious of permanent armed forces, viewing them as tools of tyranny. But reality had other plans. The colonies that became the United States were scattered along the Atlantic coast, connected more by water than by roads. Early America was fundamentally a maritime society. Trade moved by ship, communication traveled by ship, the economy depended on access to the ocean, and almost immediately the infant nation discovered a harsh truth: if you can't protect your ships, you can't protect your prosperity. During the Revolutionary War, the Continental Navy was essentially a guerrilla force, privateers and converted merchant ships harassing British supply lines. After independence, Congress actually disbanded the Navy completely in 1785, believing it unnecessary in peacetime. Big mistake. Within years, American merchant ships in the Mediterranean were being seized by Barbary pirates from North Africa. These pirates demanded tribute, essentially protection money, and the young United States had no way to resist or refuse. The humiliation was complete when the Dey of Algiers captured American sailors and held them as slaves. In 1794, Congress finally authorized construction of 6 frigates, the birth of the modern U.S. Navy. The message was clear: a nation that trades across oceans needs a navy, whether it wants one or not. Those original 6 frigates, ships like the Constitution, which still floats in Boston Harbor today, were built with a specific philosophy. America couldn't afford to match the massive European navies ship for ship, so they built individual vessels that were faster and more powerful than anything their size. The Constitution earned the nickname Old Ironsides during the War of 1812, when British cannonballs literally bounced off her thick oak hull. But the real transformation came later. The American Civil War from 1661 to 1665 became a laboratory for naval innovation. The North's Anaconda Plan strangled southern ports with a blockade, demonstrating how sea power could decide wars fought on land. The battle between the Monitor and the Merrimack in 1862 introduced ironclad warships, making wooden navies obsolete overnight. Then came the strategic masterstroke that changed everything: the Panama Canal. Completed in 1914, this engineering miracle cut nearly 8,000 miles off the journey between the Atlantic and Pacific. Suddenly, America's two-ocean geography transformed from a strategic vulnerability into an advantage. A ship could move between oceans in hours instead of weeks. World War I showed America that oceans weren't walls keeping enemies out. They were highways enemies could use to project power. World War II proved it beyond doubt. The Pacific theater was fundamentally a naval war, decided by carrier battles at Midway, the Philippine Sea, and Leyte Gulf. These weren't just military victories, they were demonstrations that the aircraft carrier had replaced the battleship as the ultimate expression of naval power. After 1945, something unprecedented happened. The British Royal Navy, which had ruled the waves for centuries, began its decline. The cost of empire, the devastation of two world wars, and the rise of air power meant Britain could no longer afford global naval supremacy. Into that vacuum stepped the United States, but with a crucial difference. America didn't seek colonies or territory, it sought something more ambitious, a rules-based international order where commerce could flow freely and allies could rely on American protection. The Cold War solidified this role. The Soviet Union built a formidable navy, but it was fundamentally defensive, designed to protect Soviet waters and contest NATO's Atlantic lifeline. The U.S. Navy, by contrast, was designed for power projection, to go anywhere and influence events thousands of miles from home. Nuclear propulsion was the game changer. A nuclear-powered aircraft carrier like the USS Enterprise, launched in 1960, could steam for years without refueling, limited only by food supplies and crew endurance. The modern U.S. Navy operates on a scale that defies easy comprehension. Consider the Nimitz-class carriers, 10 of which are still in service alongside the newer Gerald Ford class. Each Nimitz carrier is over 1,000 feet long, stands 20 stories above the waterline, and houses a crew of over 5,000 sailors and aircrew. The flight deck covers 4.5 acres. These ships generate enough electricity to power a small city, and their nuclear reactors will run for 25 years before needing refueling. But carriers are just the most visible element. The Navy's submarine force operates in total secrecy, an underwater fleet that includes 14 Ohio-class ballistic missile submarines, each carrying 24 Trident missiles with multiple nuclear warheads. These subs patrol the oceans continuously, undetected, forming one leg of America's nuclear triad. Then there are the Virginia-class attack submarines, technological marvels that can launch Tomahawk cruise missiles, deploy special operations forces, conduct surveillance, and hunt enemy submarines in total silence. The surface fleet includes Arleigh-Burke-class destroyers equipped with the Aegis combat system, capable of tracking and engaging hundreds of targets simultaneously. These ships can intercept ballistic missiles in their terminal phase, shoot down aircraft 100 miles away, attack surface ships over the horizon, and bombard land targets with precision-guided munitions, all while defending themselves from submarines below. The logistics tale is equally impressive. The Navy's Military SEAL Command operates over 100 support ships, everything from hospital ships and submarine tenders to fast combat support ships that can refuel and resupply a carrier strike group while underway at 25 knots. This allows the fleet to operate for months without returning to port, a capability no other Navy possesses. Geographic positioning tells its own story. The Navy maintains major bases in Norfolk, Virginia, San Diego, California, Pearl Harbor, Hawaii, Yokosuka, Japan, and Bahrain in the Persian Gulf. These aren't just ports, they're strategic anchors that allow the Navy to respond to crises within days rather than weeks. When disaster strikes anywhere in the world, American carriers are often first on scene with hospitals, helicopters, and disaster relief supplies. The training pipeline reflects the complexity.
It takes years to qualify as a naval aviator, learning to land a fighter jet on a pitching deck at night in rough seas, a maneuver pilots call controlled crash. Submarine crews train for emergencies in scenarios that would terrify most people: flooding, fire, loss of power in the depths. Surface warfare officers learn to command ships worth billions of dollars while still in their 20s. Why does all this matter today? Because roughly 90% of global trade moves by sea. The international economy depends on shipping lanes remaining open and safe. The Navy's presence in strategic chokepoints like the Strait of Hormuz, the Strait of Malacca, and the Suez Canal isn't about conquest. It's about ensuring that oil tankers, container ships, and bulk carriers can move freely without fear of piracy or intersection.
The story of the U.S. Navy is ultimately the story of how geography shapes destiny. Born from a nation of coastal colonies, forged in wars that proved oceans weren't barriers but battlefields, and evolved into the guarantor of global maritime commerce, the Navy represents something unique in history. A military force so dominant that its primary mission is preventing war rather than waging it. As long as trade flows by sea and alliances depend on the credible promise of support, those 11 floating cities and the fleet around them will continue their endless patrols, writing the latest chapter in a story that began with 6 wooden frigates and the simple recognition that freedom, whether political or economic, ultimately depends on who controls the waves. Every carrier, submarine, and sailor tells a story, and together they form a force that protects over 70% of global trade routes and guarantees freedom of the seas. This is not just military history, it's the story of power, progress, and purpose, forged by history itself.